It's my pleasure today to welcome Johannes Elmenijs, the CEO of Siemens Mobility. Siemens are the headline sponsors of the Smart Fleet Maintenance Summit taking place on the 15th to the 16th of March, London. Welcome today, Johannes. Thank you for joining us today for this discussion.
Good morning, Victor. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to a very interesting summit and a lot of fruitful discussions.
I'd love to hear that, Johannes. I'd love to hear that. So just to kind of set the tone for this interview, would you start by maybe telling me a little bit more about Siemens Mobility and your role at the company?
My pleasure. Siemens Mobility is a company which was, of course, founded with Siemens together, and we are taking care about rail and rail operations for 175 years now. Means we are active in the field of rolling stock, but also in the active of signaling, traffic management, and electrification, so the whole thing. And for me, it's very important that we understand where we are going into the future. There's a lot of discussion about sustainability. There's a lot of discussion of CO2 footprint, a lot of discussion about autonomous driving. And for all these topics, rail is a wonderful spot to be in, and we can derive a lot of solutions. We can really change transportation going forward. And Siemens is well suited with the technology with a purpose to really drive this transformation of transportation going forward. Siemens has really invested a lot into this, and my role as head of customer service is really to make sure that everything is up and running 100%, as we claim, going forward. And I would add to this now, it's not only that it's up and running, but it's also taken care in a way that it's environmentally friendly, taking the responsibility which we have for our planet, which we have for our passengers to be safe, all this together. And this can only be done using the power of digitalization, for example. And this was the biggest change I believe we have seen in the last couple of years. And there's so much more to come.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sustainability is a growing issue amongst the people we talk to on a daily basis. So you're spot on that respect. From our other conversations with industry leaders, it's very clear that learning how to also achieve world-class asset management and improving maintenance forecasting is a very high priority for our audience. In your experience, what's the #1 way operators can begin to optimize their asset management systems to improve budget planning and forecasting?
When you talk about asset management, then of course it's also taking care about the life cycle of the asset. And this is very, I think, very specific to rail. We're talking about very long life cycles. When you think about our rolling stock assets, we are talking normally 30 years and even more. Infrastructure, goes all the way up to 50 years. So there's a lot of responsibility to really understand the life cycle and understand the impacts which we have during the life cycle. And this is where, for me, for assets owners, very important to gain this transparency. We are doing more things in terms of online connections, connectivities, also data modeling, data analytics. So there's a lot of transparency available. How is the asset behaving? And then it's for me important that we not just understand how the asset is behaving, that we also are able to predict the future. Talking about this 30 years, you need to figure out what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And having the transparency about the actual situation, having a clear picture what will happen the next years can lead to really meaningful decisions. Decisions can make the sense to invest in the existing rolling stock, to a refurbishment, to a midlife refurbishment, to an extension, or do I need to modernize, or do I need to replace? All this needs to be done in a very meaningful way, and with the data which gives you the current situation and the prediction in the future, you can do this in the best possible way.
Okay, well, I hope that's advice that our operators listening will take to heart. And I mean, in your experience, what kind of savings can operators achieve in their maintenance operations through implementing a complete digital asset management strategy?
For me, it's really doing more with less. And this sounds a little bit strange, right? If you talk every time about cost saving, you also need to think, maybe my service, my passenger service or my freight service is going down and I have to sacrifice performance or whatever. This is not the case. if you really understand the things, then you understand the intervals which you're using for service. You understand the activities like maintenance, like overhauls, and you can stretch intervals. And this is what I mean. You can do more with less. You have less activities, less material which you need, less material consumption. You have also less energy. And if you do this right, then your costs go down, but you also increase the availability of the fleet because it's less in workshops, it's less in repair, it's less in overhauls, it's used less energy. And then you can really drive a better passenger service going forward. And again, facing the situation which we have to build additional infrastructure, to build additional tracks, normally this is a process 5 to 10 years. With now the clear goal of everyone to increase the transport capabilities with rail, using what we have and using this in a much smarter way, using all the assets which we have, taking care out the reserves which we have, for example, in trains sitting idle for in the case of something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important that nothing goes wrong and that we have really a clear picture going forward.
Yeah.
So really, I believe if we use the power of the transparency and the prediction, we can do more with less.
I think that is a massive selling point. And I know, obviously, speaking to the industry this year, it is a kind of common theme across operators. How can they get more with less resources? Because that's the reality that we're unfortunately faced with. So that's a really good insight in terms of how they can achieve that. In your opinion, what do operators need to do to reduce maintenance interventions, which is obviously something you just touched on, and also increase availability of the trains? I mean, I guess this is the holy grail.
Yeah, again, it starts with the transparency. We need the online data. To just get data once a month or something like this, and then someone does some error code analysis or whatever, or use rule engines saying, if I have this error code and I have the next error code, maybe I have a problem there. This is something which is, for me, really old-fashioned. We need to have the online data so that we really understand the condition of the asset. We need to do this in a high frequent so that we really understand the wear and tear. And if we do this, then again, the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity is there to predict the future right. And it's a learning curve, right? So at the beginning, you can probably predict a couple of weeks ahead, but we have already data models that we can predict more than a half year ahead. And with this, then you have really the opportunity to use your assets much smarter. You can optimize the wear and tear in your fleet because there's maybe different routes with different wear and tear depending on tracks, depending on usage, depending on speed, depending on weather. So you can optimize this, and you understand now there's a lot of parameters which are coming in, and you need to combine all these parameters to do the right decisions and really optimize the transport. And this is where a partnering model comes in, and now the modern word is an ecosystem, so that all these people which are involved need to deliver the data and come into a win-win scenario and have one outcome in mind is really highest availability and what I said before, do more with less.
Okay, great. I mean, on a more personal level, you've been at Siemens for a number of years. How have you personally seen the kind of Siemens mobility digital solutions evolve in the last few years? Obviously, pre-COVID, post-COVID, and what are you really excited about in terms of looking into the future, in terms of the new solutions, the new digital technologies that are coming on stream now for the rail industry?
We were starting really with the analytics. So we were saying we need to understand what kind of data and what is really the impact of the data which we can generate. And we were very successful with doing this because as an OEM, you have the design know-how, and then you have really the information, and you can also use what now is called digital twin. When we use the data already from really doing a construction of the rolling stock or construction of infrastructure fully digitalized, we can transfer all this data, this digital twin, into maintenance. And this is where I'm very, very excited because you don't need to wait anymore for proof points, right? So when you do a change, normally in the past, you had to have spent a year or more to get enough proof points for homologation and being sure. Now with the data modeling coming out of the digital twin, you can simulate, as I said before, different scenarios you can figure out what is the best scenario for this solution, this problem, and then you can really work on this one in a very, very short time. Because the goal is, of course, to implement. Yeah, it's not just to measure and monitor, it's really to drive changes in a way that is really safe, because the rail industry has a very high safety standard, and this is very important. And there's a second topic when you really talk about the future and also what happened now lately, and we see all these political tensions around, which also leads in much more critical cybersecurity topics.
Okay.
So we have also invested in the last year significant in really to make our systems, our data also cyber secure, because we all understand it's critical infrastructure, and we don't want to that something happens and really causes a bad incident, be it really coming to an accident or something like this, or to some issues where data are stolen or whatever. So we are fully committed to not only drive analytics, condition-based maintenance, predictive maintenance, 100% availability. We are also committed that this is cybersecurity on the highest possible level.
Well, those are two very definitely interesting topics, and I know from my point of view, digital twin would be an area I'd love to sit down and talk to you for hours if I could, just to get a real definition of really what that looks like in rail. But I mean, in terms of the overall event, what are the topics on the agenda has most piqued your interest, and who are you most, I guess, looking forward to hearing from at the summit this year?
You know, it's as I just said, I think this partnership topic, right? For me, it's really getting to the point that even as an OEM with all the design know-how, you can't grasp it all. So it's really that we need, as a rail industry, come together and work together in partnership setting, customers, OEMs, different other suppliers, different other vendors, software company, hardware company, and small, big companies, university, you name it, right? So, and this, how can we figure out that this is really getting into a win-win situation? I really believe the idea of creating an ecosystem is something which really drives it. But what are the business models behind this ecosystem, and how can we really make sure that everybody has a high interest to be successful in such kind of an ecosystem? So this is a topic which I'm mostly interested in, and have these discussions. What are the view of the other people? What they experience as a win-win, and how we really can shape this ecosystem? Because I feel clearly the responsibility, because I for my kids, to make this a better transportation going forward, and I believe it cannot be done by one person or one player or a couple of players. It needs to be done in a more holistic approach.
I think that's one of the fantastic reasons, and one of the reasons I guess I'm very passionate about the rail industry. The level of collaboration, the level of partnership needed to advance, it's something that you don't see in other industries, and I think it's one of the reasons why it's such an exciting time to be in rail.
Therefore, I'm really looking forward also to the summit, because it's really a place where leaders come together. We need to find this as a way going forward. And joining these forces about leader of different transportation authorities, which have the responsibilities, leaders of different OEMs, and also, of course, leaders coming out of the research and the university side. So this is an excellent place for exchange.
And just, I mean, obviously, the final word going to operators. I mean, what would you say is the top reason operators, your end clients, potential end clients, should be at the summit this year to kind of hear the latest innovations and best practice in introducing some of these digital solutions?
For me, it's really that our passengers, our customers, also the freight, need to see rail as the most reliable and most sustainable mode of transport. And I think the technology is there. It's now the question, how can we quickly implement this and also get the story across that rail is safe, rail is highly reliable, and is also highly sustainability delivering. And this is where I really believe when operators will join the summit, they will get the right information to also communicate this much better to their people, and communicate this with a high level of confidence that everything is there. We need now to implement and do this jointly.
Well, Johannes, I have to say thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure picking your brain and getting your thoughts on the current state of the industry, and I guess what we have to look forward to in the near future as well. Thank you very much for your comments. I'm sure they will really help to kind of give an understanding to those who don't know what the smart fleet maintenance is, and for those who are going to be there, just a little context in terms of what they should expect to hear. So with that in mind, I'll say thank you very much, and I look forward to meeting you in person on the 15th of March in London.
Thank you very much, Victor. Also looking very much forward to our event in March in London. Thank you.
Fantastic.